Usually, host nations of a World Cup tend to overperform, or to the very least, they'll perform to their ability. We saw the United States do that in 1994, where they clearly punched above their weight. France was one of the favorites in 1998. They performed to their ability, and they won the World Cup at home. In 2002, South Korea is a great example. They actually made it to the semifinals. Actually, that one was very sketchy. There was pure robbery left and right coming from the refs. We hadn't seen something that bad since, I think, the hand of God from Maradona in the 1986 World Cup. So South Korea made it to the semifinals, it's true, but it was with a lot of help from the refs. I actually wouldn't mind if the refs helped the United States in 2026. Russia in 2018 also overperformed, along with many others, except for Brazil. Brazil always finds a way to screw things over whenever they host a World Cup. Now, we also had some terrible performing hosts like South Africa in 2010, Qatar in 2022. Both those got grouped, but they are more of anomalies. Usually, the hosts do fine. So what will it be in 2026? The first World Cup with 3 host nations: Canada, the United States of America, and Mexico. Will they punch above their weight, or will they have a finger shoved right up Main Street? Hello. If you're new here, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV. And we're less than 1 year away from the 2026 World Cup, and today I want to talk about all 3 host nations. I want to talk about how the national teams are doing and more or less try to project how I think it's going to go for each one of them during the World Cup. Which one is more likely to make a deep run, maybe to the quarterfinals? Which one is likely to flop by, getting grouped in the World Cup at home? And for that, I have a special guest in this video. One of my favorite guests. The best guest we've ever had, or one of them, right? And his name is Jack, and he's not from the Titanic. That one died. He's dead. He's gone. Jack from Deadball TV. And let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on this topic. Out of the 3 host nations, which one is more likely to make it the furthest? And which one is more likely to get grouped in the 2026 World Cup? Now, before we start, make sure to drop a like in this video because I will not be requesting during it, because I'm not going to interrupt the guest to ask you to do something that you should be doing right now because it's free and it takes a second. Just hit the like button. Just do it, okay? Thank you very much for that. This video is brought to you by SoRare. So a quick word from our sponsor, and let's roll the episode. If you like fantasy sports, I got the perfect one for you. Tactical Manager TV is partnering up once again with SoRare with a special offer. Just use the link in the description of this video. In SoRare, you can collect your own virtual cards of your favorite players. But why would you want to collect virtual cards? Because you can line them up on 5-a-side games every single week, and if the players perform in real life, you can win real money, unique experiences, signed jerseys, game tickets, or even more cards to improve your club. And SoRare doesn't only have soccer, they also have the NBA, and they have also Major League Baseball. Unlike other fantasy games where it's pay per play, in SoRare you pay to get the players you want permanently as cards, and then you can play multiple times using those cards until the player retires. And if you are new to SoRare, you can sign up with the link in the description of this video with a special offer. You will get a 50% bonus in your first few purchases up to $300 spent, which means if you use the link in the description and you never bought cards before, you will get 50% as credit up to $300 spent. So if you spend $300, you get $150 in credit. Essentially a $150 welcome bonus. Thank you very much, SoRare, for partnering up with Tactical Manager TV and sponsoring the channel. Okay, you all requested. We brought Jack back. Jack, welcome back to Tactical Manager TV. It's going to be a fun video. How you doing?
I was requested?
You were requested, yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm deeply honored by that.
It was like 2
Thank you,
accounts, but I take it into consideration.
It was actually me in your Discord. I was like, yo, bring that Deadball TV guy back on.
It worked. It worked. We got you back. It doesn't matter how you get back here. You got back. You're back. And it's very rare. There are not many guests that come here twice. Pete is one of them. You, Adam, and it's pretty much it. It's like 3 or 4. I'm thinking about bringing Alexei back, but we need to see if he'll be in his best behavior. He usually isn't. So there's that going with Alexei. But today we're going to be talking
Could
about
be
the
the three
World
of
Cup.
us next time. You,
What?
me, and Lexi Lalas. That's a great pod right there.
Yeah. I had him on once, and it was fun. It was fun. I would say this thing. If I go to a bar with Alexei and only talk about soccer, it could be kind of enjoyable. Not because of his takes. It's just a good debate. It's a good debate. But we're not here to talk about Alexei. Very kind guy, by the way, at least when it comes to the podcasting soccer world. We're here to talk about the USA, Canada, Mexico, and the 2026 World Cup. Because throughout history, we've had many host nations punch above their weight. And we've had host nations like Qatar and South Africa that I wouldn't say they disappointed because my expectations for them were kind of low, but they didn't punch above their weight. They were crap. They weren't good. Qatar worse than South Africa. South Africa looked a tiny bit better. And next year, we have the first World Cup with 3 host nations. And let's be honest, none of them are title contenders. I would hope that's your take. And I want to start with one question. And unfortunately, we're not going to be talking about Jamaica because I know you'd love to shit on Jamaica. And this is a very hot topic, a very hot debate. I think the last time we've had a debate here in North America this big was when we were debating whether or not Sam and Frodo were gay. So we're going to be talking about which one of these 3 teams, Mexico, US, and Canada, which one is most likely to get grouped in the 2026 World Cup and why?
Firstly, I don't like to shit on Jamaica. I like to shed light and truth upon Jamaica. It just happens to skew negative.
They don't see it,
but
that
it
way.
is the objective truth. Well, sometimes the truth hurts. People would rather consume a lie. But we're not here to talk about Jamaica. They might not qualify. Depends how they do against Curacao in the group. The host that's most likely to get grouped. I don't know about you, but I would put the probability of this happening for all 3, Canada, Mexico, USA, at like 25%.
For all of them?
I don't.
Or you mean 1 out of the 3?
The most likely, I would put it like 25%, maybe 30% if we see the groups come out and it's doom stack. And because we're talking about them most likely having to finish last. Like the new format is saving us as a region.
Explain it so the viewer that doesn't know will know why you're saying that too.
So typically in the old World Cup, right, you have groups of 4, first 2 go through, 3rd place, 4th place automatically eliminated. But now because we're having an extra knockout round with more teams, some of the 3rd place teams will go through. So that allows the possibility.
The top 8 out of 12.
The top 8. So that's a lot of freaking 3rd place teams, man. So you have to be really bad. I'm talking like 2 out of 10 performance as a team to not go through. I mean, if you get 3 points, I imagine you're going through. So what's the likelihood that these 3 teams don't get 1 win at least in the group stage? Probably 25%. Some of the groups, I've seen you tweet about this, how some of them are potentially shaping up very difficult for all the CONCACAF sides. That would be an issue, and I think there is a risk of getting grouped. I would say most likely to get grouped. Honestly, I kind of think it's the United States.
I think it's Canada.
And I'm not just saying that to trigger you. I actually think, okay, you think it's all right. I'll defend Canada. You defend the United States. Should I go first?
All right. Who are we defend? Who defends first? That's the question. Do I defend first? Do you defend first?
I'll go on the attack first. So
okay,
I think
attack the US. Attack
grouped.
the US, and then I'll defend the United States. Go ahead.
Firstly, I think under Mauricio Pochettino, you guys don't have any good results or good victories. I think from a morale standpoint, the United States is the worst of those 3 teams. And it's not even close. Like, I know Canada lost to Guatemala on pens, but I would still say the vibe and the discussion around the United States is the most negative. I think the United States has the fewest amount of reps with the A team of the other teams, whether that's because Pulisic wanted to go on vacation and you're part of the United States in Florida, or whether it's because of injuries. Yunus Musa was supposed to get a transfer. I don't know what happened to that.
He just wanted.
So I think he was just tired, man. We're all tired. You know, we're just talking, we're working 12 hours a day. Everybody's tired, but you and I didn't get to take the summer off. We were on here grinding on YouTube. Smash the like button. So I think the United States, from a vibe standpoint, is the lowest. Reps with the first team is the fewest. Results in the friendlies against top nations most recently, it was the worst. Results against the best nations overall, even including CONCACAF sides, has been the worst of the big three. Home field advantage, I'm not even sure how big it is for the U.S. versus a team like Mexico. Now, you can argue that Canada's isn't fantastic either. I think it's still pretty solid. Mexico's has the best playing at the Azteca. I don't think the United States home field advantage is that great either. And I think the pressure as being the main host is going to be a lot to bear. That's the argument against the United States.
Okay, so let's go. It's going to be interesting how I'm going to defend them. I'm almost going to defend the U.S. attacking Canada because the whole point I'm trying to make is that Canada is most likely to get grouped.
And then I'll defend. So
yeah,
let's go.
because pretty much most of the things you said, I agree with. So I can't really counter that specifically. My overall point, the U.S. is the U.S. has been rock bottom since the summer of 2024. When we got grouped in the Copa America, that was rock bottom. And we haven't really, the more I think about it, I don't think we've gotten worse. I think we just stayed there. We're in the same place. We would expect the team to get better because Berhalter got fired and we were expecting Pochettino to get them back on track. That didn't happen. I think the team is rock bottom. Canada has Jesse Marsh in charge. And historically, anyone that followed Jesse Marsh, he starts flaming hot and the dude crashes very hard the longer he stays, right? Whether it is with, I guess Salzburg it wasn't, in Leipzig, he was just like crap right away. But we saw that with Leeds. We saw that a little bit in MLS. And that's Jesse Marsh. He started flaming hot with Canada in the Copa America, even though the semifinals run in the Copa America, sometimes I like to add the context, which was historical for Canada, but there was a lot of luck here and there, bracket, red cards that favored Canada. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it. They didn't play well. That's my point. I think the only game I saw
that they poorly though.
No, they were it was a team of like brawlers. They were fighting their way through. And it worked, and I don't want to take that credit away from them because they still made it to the semifinals. It doesn't matter. But it's not like they made it. They're knocking out a Colombia, a Brazil, an Argentina, nothing of that. They pretty much lost to every opponent they were supposed to lost, and they defeated teams that were matched evenly with them. I wouldn't say they were supposed to beat those teams, but they were kind of even. They went through. Credit to them. The United States is kind of stuck there. The United States will either stay where they are or go up from here. I'm still hopeful that the U.S. will get the best players going. We still have a lot of guys that have played well for their clubs, but the national team haven't been great. Like Johnny's one of them. How is it possible that the guy comes in, becomes a starter right away for Atletico, plays well in their first game against Porto, and then for the U.S., we're going to have to find a way the next few months. I'm hopeful Pochettino. While with Jesse Marsh, I'm only expecting Canada to get worse. And keep in mind, Canada lost the Nations League to Mexico. They beat a U.S. that the morale was all the way down. They come into the Gold Cup with, let's be honest, they had most of their players in the Gold Cup. They had most of them. Jesse Marsh came out with that BS excuse. We were missing a few guys. They had most of their guys. That was a team that should have, at the worst, made it to the final of the Gold Cup and lost to Mexico. Worst case scenario, they lost to Guatemala. They made it like the U.S. made it further with whatever that abomination of a team was that Pochettino brought. With freaking Ajiman playing every single game, almost every minute. Ajiman, great video.
You have to add the context. Like, we're adding context to why they did well at Copa. You have to also add the context that they were killing Guatemala when it was 11v11. Then they get a red card and lose on pens. So it's not like they just like completely collapsed and end up losing 3-1 against Guatemala. I think also not having extra time favored all of the underdogs at the Gold Cup, much like the Copa doesn't have extra time until the freaking final, which is ridiculous.
But then we can go back to Copa and say if like Tim Weah didn't go all Karate Kid against Panama, we might have won that game.
Perhaps. Right? But I think even if you remove that, you still have the Nations League failure to talk about immediately.
Yeah, but then it comes out to morale. But the problem is if he didn't punch the guy, we probably would have gone through and Berhalter would have still been in charge. And I don't know if we would have been better with that. So, but the overall point is they got knocked out by Guatemala. And that's not like getting knocked out by that's a team that doesn't go to the World Cup, Jack. They don't play in the World Cup. And if they go there and they'll be happy to score a goal if they score a goal in the World Cup. On top of that, history tells us that Canada ain't that good in World Cups. They never really got a single point. I don't even know if they're going to lose their World Cup virginity there. Of course, when we're speculating this, it 100% depends on the groups because if we place Mexico, and I did that simulation of the groups, if you put Mexico in a group with Japan, Ecuador, and Italy, which is the worst case scenario, yeah, Mexico could get grouped, even at home. Like that could happen. Of course, that. But right now, with the lack of data that we have and assuming the groups are close, Canada to me would be the one. They also lack a bit more depth than the US. I think the starting 11 is pretty even, maybe even a little bit to Canada if you want to argue that, but pretty close to starting 11 of both. But I do think the US has more options in case injuries happen when compared to Canada. And on top of all of that, I mean, Pulisic rested during the summer. He's going to be in the World Cup. I disagree with his rest, just to make that clear, even though everyone knows about this. But he did rest and he's healthy. Alfonso Davies has a torn ACL. He'll be back later this year. We don't know what version of him we're going to get. That's Canada's best player. I don't know. I just think there's too much against Canada compared to the US, and they're in a downward trajectory. They were supposed to win one CONCACAF trophy this year. That's what I was told. I was told they have arrived. They were going to win a trophy this year. And they didn't only not win a trophy in one tournament, they did worse than the US C team, B team, whatever you want to call it. And then the other one lost to Mexico. And I mean, they beat the US in the losers game, but let's be, who cares, right? So
I mean, they killed the US, is what I would say.
yeah, the US. I mean, can you kill something that's already dead?
Depends. If this is like Resident Evil, then yes.
Ajiman was starting that game too. Our beloved Ajiman, our best friend. Oh, by the way, that video did very well. We did a whole video about Ajiman on Deadball TV, and that video did very well.
That was the genesis of your entire summer from the US standpoint going forward. All right, I hear you. Valid points. But to me, it kind of sounds like you're saying the two biggest reasons. One is depth, which I do agree with. Canadian depth is not nearly as good as the Canadians think it is. The second major point you have is basically assuming that the downward trend of Jesse Marsch-led teams, that the pattern of explosive beginnings and then flaming out really hard is going to continue. That may or may not happen. So I can't really speak on that. I agree on the depth.
They've gotten progressively worse every window since the Copa America.
I don't think they were worse in the Nations League versus the Copa. I think they lose to Mexico because they concede in 30 seconds. And then they try to go bully ball against the Mexican national team that under Javier Aguirre has been very physical themselves. So he's basically trying to fight rock and rock. If we're playing rock, paper, scissors here, it was never going to work because the score was 1-0 after 30 seconds.
But But aren't you also assuming that the U.S. will just continue to stay at rock bottom? Like there will be no improvement under Pochettino? That's the same thing, right? It's the same pattern.
Let me get here because I think this is we're gonna finish the circle here. If we look at the strategy and how these three teams want to play, we're not really talking about Mexico, which is funny because the irony of this was Mexico will be grouped. But if we look at Canada and we look at how Jesse Marsch wants to play, he wants to sit back and counter with occasional moments of like high press, like blitzkrieg press. That's kind of how he wants to play. And at the Copa America, I think why we saw them be successful on top of good fortune was the fact that Canada is built to be the underdog team. They are built to be the team that's supposed to bunker down and go at it. They're not built like a Brazil or like an Argentina breaking down low blocks. And we saw even at the Gold Cup, they were really bad at breaking down low blocks. And I think Canadians were scared about that based on how they looked against El Salvador and Curacao. Like they were not good performances. But at the World Cup, even though they're a host, I don't think Canada's going to have possession. I don't think Canada's going to be the favorite in more than one game maximum in the group. So I do think that they could get somebody like an Ecuador. That would be a very interesting matchup.
That would be 0-0. 0-0.
That'd probably be a 0-0. And then look, if the pot four is going to be some weaker side from the AFC or a poor African side, they can win that game. But think that
they have to
better
take the initiative that game? Wouldn't they have to take the initiative and go at the opponent? And that's what you're saying they struggle.
I guess it depends on how the first two. Well, they would be a pot one, so they're going to play the pot four first, right? So they would have their easiest game first.
Should be, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you lose that game, you don't deserve to be at the World Cup anyways. But that goes for all three teams. Whereas Pochettino, I don't think Pochettino's style is going to work against good sides. I think it's going to be another Switzerland friendly where you guys get chefed. I think he's not
So
going to
here's
set
my
up the
question
team
to
to be
you.
the underdog.
But you think this World Cup is kind of, I know everything else doesn't matter to Pochettino, but the World Cup's kind of important to him. If he wants to get a job in Europe for a decent club after this, he needs to like not get embarrassed with the US, get out of the group, possibly win one knockout round at least, and call it a day. You don't think he'll go through like desperate times, desperate measures, and completely change the way he sees it and just realize that the best way for the US to go is to play as the underdog? The US, the same thing you were saying about Canada, the US cannot break low blocks, but the US has players that can counterattack. So just sit deep, compact, narrow, defend for your lives, and counterattack. Essentially, what the US used to be. You don't think he'll adapt ever? He's that stubborn, that stupid?
I wouldn't call it stupidity. I would call it arrogance on his part. I think, I mean, I'm a Spurs fan, so I've seen years of Pochettino. The guy and many Argentine coaches do not have a plan B, and they certainly don't have a plan C. So unless we see something in the friendlies coming up, because I think we're both playing Japan, South Korea next, and I think you guys have some really good friendlies after that
Ecuador
too. I
after.
think it's you, Ecuador after that. And in Colombia, is that the other one? Or like
I think it's actually New Zealand, which is not great, but I mean,
again?
I think so. I'll double check while you talk. I'll
Hmm.
double check.
Unless he decides to experiment in the friendlies upcoming and we actually see this man embrace a sit back and counter type approach, no, I don't think he will change.
We play
I
Australia,
really
by the way.
don't.
Australia.
Australia, that's a great friendly for y'all.
Yeah.
I don't think you guys will win.
Well, the way we're playing right now, we play Japan, South Korea, Ecuador, and Australia. The way we've been playing, we lose all four or maybe get a draw, like a 0-0 draw with Ecuador if we defend, because Ecuador can't score also.
Correct.
They're hard to score at, but if you just bunker against Ecuador, you have pretty high odds of getting a 0-0 draw. No, I still think there's one thing too about the US is very often, and again, this now it's just me going based on gut feeling, and you can take it for what it's worth. The US does usually punch above its weight in World Cups in modern history, besides, I guess, 98 and '06. But 94 punched above the weight, 2002, 2010, and 2014. Like 2014, like no one expected that team. I remember no one expected them to get out of that group. They got out of it. 2022, even when the US was complete dog crap under Berhalter, tied England, got out of the group with some comfort there, beat Iran, and then lost to the Dutch as they should. Um, well, not as they should. They should be able to put up a fight against the Dutch
Should
if
have been
they.
closer.
Yeah, it should have been closer than that. They should have had a shot. It never felt like we were in that game. It felt like we were done from the
Yeah.
beginning. The US will probably turn up at least enough to accomplish what's needed. While Canada, I mean, we saw in 2022, I know they were handed a very tough group in 2022. It was a very tough group. But again, 0 points. 0 points with the same players they have now. It's mostly the same players. I mean, defense might have gotten better. Bombito wasn't there. Ismael Kone, I think he came up later, or he was at the World Cup. He was still very young. But
Yeah.
most of the players are the same. Jonathan David, Alfonso Davies, Kyle Larin, Eustachio, all these guys were there, and Herdman played that way. I'm not convinced. I'm still going with Canada is the most likely to get grouped. Are you sticking to the US? That's what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick to the US. I think that in that 2022 World Cup, a lot of Canada's best players were like 21, 22 years old. Like they were a super
Same with the
young
US.
team.
Same with the US.
Yeah. Same with the US. But your thing about the US punching above its weight, that's not this generation, bro. That's the
I
dogs of a better day, of a brighter time.
You're saying Pulisic's
That's
not a
gone.
dog? He's not fighting like Clinton? Yeah, he's not. He's taking the summer off.
Weston McKennie, he reminds me of Jermaine Jones.
Nowhere near as tough, but yeah. Now, which one is most likely to shock the world? By shock the world, I don't mean like winning the World Cup. That's not happening with these teams. Honestly, semifinals does not seem even remotely realistic with these teams. But I do think a quarterfinals run is something that would surprise many around the world. Any of these teams make it there. Which one do you think is most likely? And again, we didn't place Mexico as the one that's most likely to get grouped, but I also don't have Mexico with the one that's most likely to shock the world.
I don't really know if Mexico's most likely to shock the world either. I think the strength of Mexico is a very strong defensive team. Looks like the midfield has finally moved on to the next gen after Andres Guardado and Hector Herrera held it down for a decade. Looks like we're finally in the Marcel Ruiz, Edson possibly. He might play as a CB, and Mora as a midfield. Maybe Montiel, but he hasn't really featured yet. I don't know. I feel like Mexico has a hard ceiling of like round of 16.
Yeah,
That's kind of how I feel as of
I
time of recording. Weirdly, if we're talking about like who could shock the world, I mean, am I tripping if I say it's also the United States?
I think so too. It's also based on expectations, right? The U.S. right now, the whole world is looking at this team and clowning them, um, rightfully so. Okay, rightfully so. We've been complete and utter shit. Yeah, because it's also there's also this thing because Mexico is seen and known as a soccer nation. So if Mexico makes it to the quarterfinals, even I don't know if the world will be shocked. I actually think that they'll. I mean, semifinals they would, and for us it would be like holy crap, that's actually quite impressive for Mexico. But Mexico is actually, and I mean, some of my viewers are going to hate to hear this, but Mexico is actually much more well respected around the world than the U.S. when it comes to soccer. It's not close. The U.S. making it to the quarterfinals, it's going to be talked about quite a bit. And I mean, it's what we talked about too. You talked about pressure, but this team has hit rock bottom. It might do the complete opposite. Like everyone's just shitting on them. There's no,
Yeah.
what's the expectation even? But a lot of the fans think they're going to get grouped. Like there might
Yeah.
be no pressure.
I mean, even though you guys are down bad right now, if we're talking about all three national teams at peak potential, like the World Cup starts and like the whole team starts juicing
The U.S. has
and
better
performing
players.
to the levels, US is the higher ceiling.
Hmm.
The US has the highest ceiling. You guys are also the furthest away from your ceiling right now. But again, miracles happen before World Cups. Look at Morocco. They were in terrible form heading into 2022. They did not do well at the AFCON right before that. And they make the semifinals and
Well,
finish in fourth place.
World Cup is interesting. It's a short tournament, and if you catch fire at the right time, it works. Brazil, historically, in modern soccer, let's talk from the '90s beyond. Let's not go to when my grandfather would say, "Back in my day." Let's go to the '90s. Brazil won the '94 World Cup and 2002. Those were two World Cups where Brazil struggled the entire cycle, where they actually, I think, 2002 they qualified in like the last round. They had to beat Venezuela to qualify.
Venezuela.
And then
Yeah.
and then World Cups where Brazil has come in like 2006 when the World Cup started. I was a teenager. Everyone was saying Brazil has won this one. Like everyone was saying it's over. They dominated everyone in the Copa America. They dominated the Confederations Cup. Ronaldinho, Kaká, they were like the clear. Boom, they suck. And then Italy wins it, which was a team that wasn't really seen that way. The World Cup is weird, and sometimes you like the U.S. and Mexico came in hot in the 2006 World Cup in the sense of I think that was the World Cup. They were ranked like fourth, fifth in the world in the FIFA rankings for whatever that's worth. And the US got grouped in '06. Mexico got out of the group and they lost. They never make it to the Quinto Partido, but they made it out of the group. So,
You
I,
don't want expectations going into a World Cup. I don't think there's anything
no.
more terrifying than that.
No, so I think you're right. The US is probably the one most likely to shock the world. Maybe some questionable decisions from the ref also might help. But Infantino did put his office at the Trump Tower. You never know how that can go.
You
Um,
never know.
he might just go, hey, ref, listen, we can't rig it, but if there's a 50-50 call, you know who to go towards, you know who to pick. If it's 50-50, you're in doubt, go that way. Little things like that, which I know people are going to say that's not going to happen. It's like, guys, I'm not saying it's rigged, and I don't think it'll rig, but we've seen in the past some very sketchy and favorable calls for host nations.
I will say at Qatar, that didn't happen, and I was expecting it the entire tournament. If you guys remember, there's a penalty shout in the opening game against Ecuador, and I'm like, oh my God, they're going to call it. Like, the game's gone. I was so certain. And then the ref waved it off and it said play on, and Ecuador going to win 2-0.
But
I
I
think in the
think
opening game.
it's also the strength of the host. Qatar was just happy to get it, just happy to be there. We've seen some weird stuff with Russia. Korea was pretty bad. That one was
Korea
blatant.
was the worst.
Um, some
Can we talk about that for a second? Because as we're going through this stuff, like everybody talks about the host always does well, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't until very recently that like weaker teams started hosting the World Cup. And yes, like the CONCACAF in this current state, I would declare as one of the weaker teams. They're not worse than Qatar. They're not worse than South Africa, but they're not France hosting it.
Mhm.
And the whole like belief, like I remember when we were doing predictions for the last World Cup, so many people had Qatar making it out. And it was like, well, what's the argument? It's like, oh, well, they're the host. It's like, all right, bro, well, that doesn't get you out of tournaments. Like, you have to be good and the host, or you have to be somebody like a Bolivia where you have such an advantage at the host playing his altitude that, yes, you can beat a Brazil on your day. Mexico has that with the Azteca. They have the altitude. Canada, I'm not sure it exists to that degree, though I do think their home support is really good. We saw them murder Honduras 6-0 in their one home game at the Gold Cup. United States is really hit or miss, man. I mean, I don't know how many games are going to be pro-American. I mean, maybe if they're playing an African side, it
It
probably
depends
will
on the
be.
national teams that we get drawn into. That's what it depends.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, if you think about it, we will not get any CONCACAF groups because you're not allowed to, right? You can't have the same confederation. So Europeans, country, I can see them like actually coming here and putting up a big crowd, but we're going to play in big stadiums. I don't see a European nation putting 50,000, 60,000. I don't see that happening. I could see a South American invasion though. Like they just come in and just put like 30. They do. These are crazy fans that will support the national team. We saw that in Copa America, right? So that's the only one. I don't see Asian also being like these crazy fans that will pack a 70,000 seat stay. So it depends on who we get drawn into. And it depends on which South American nation we get drawn into. We could get drawn into like Paraguay. I don't think they'll sell out that. We're not going to get Argentina. We're not going to get Brazil because they're pot one. So it'd be like Colombia would be scary for the U.S.
Colombia. Or
Now,
if Venezuela get it
especially in
over the line and
like,
they qualify.
yeah, those will be scary. They'll sell out, and the fans they're loud. It's hard to tell right now, but then again, I'm going to counter you with that. That is nothing new to the U.S. national team. That's not new to them.
Right.
So they're used to that. I don't think that just the fact that the U.S. won't have to play away from home is a bit of an advantage because they won't have to go to that other country. It's in the U.S.
Correct.
There's a lot of advantages that you're more comfortable, you know the place, hotels, stadium, environment, weather. They're all used to that, the Americans. We saw that in, for example, the Club World Cup, where a lot of Europeans were like complaining about the weather. But then you have players like McKennie that was here, where they're not complaining. The MLS teams, they're used to it. The South Americans as well. And to your point about host nations, yeah, in the past it was mainly hosted in South America, so it'd be like Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, and then Mexico was probably the only one outside of South America and Europe that hosted World Cups. This is actually the third World Cup that Mexico will be hosting. They hosted in 1970 when Brazil won it. They hosted in 1986 when Argentina won it, and then now Mexico is a co-host with the U.S. And interesting enough is very often World Cups outside of Europe, South Americans do better. Brazil won in Mexico in 1970. Argentina,
Korea.
obviously. Korea, Brazil. U.S., Brazil, 94. Argentina, 86 was in Mexico. 78 was in Argentina. 2022 in Qatar. Uruguay won it in Brazil, right? And then they won it, I think, in Argentina and Uruguay. So this is a World Cup that is going to be a lot different from previous ones. It's expanded. Weather is going to play a role. Time zone. There's time zone differences, big ones, right? I'm very interested in what can happen. And I'm going to agree with you and say that the U.S. is most likely to shock. It's not that funny for me because I picked actually Canada to get grouped. But you picked the U.S. the most likely to get grouped, and you picked the U.S. most likely to shock the world. You essentially pick, the U.S. can go super deep or can get grouped.
I think you guys are the lowest team right now, but again, you have the highest ceiling. The United States has a higher ceiling than Mexico. Mexico's operating at like 80%, 85% capacity right now. What is the US operating at?
20?
60?
Less, probably.
Yeah,
I would
50.
say less.
I'll give you 50%. And Canada's probably similar, around like 70%. Like, they can be better than the Gold Cup. They were in the first game, but they don't have the room for growth, especially with the questionable Alphonso Davies coming back. If the United States puts it all together, and again, everybody's 10 out of 10 going into the tournament, the US has the strongest argument to go the furthest. But that's not how footy works, and I'm sure we'll do an updated version of this video right before.
When we get the groups, when we actually have the groups.
Yeah, of course. And like, there's going to be injuries, unfortunately, this season. And I don't know, maybe there's a coaching change or something happens that's going to affect this. I mean, like, God forbid somebody like Raul Jimenez or Christian Pulisic goes down. I mean, I think it's curtains for both teams. I don't think Santiago Jimenez is ready to lead Mexico to World Cup. I think that seriously lowers our ceiling of potential for Mexico. So, yeah, we're filming this like literally 11 months out from is it July or June it starts?
It starts early June.
Early June. Okay, we're 10 months away. Roughly. So much can happen. But yeah, the United States, I mean, they're the most talented team. Not the best team, but the most talented team. So yes, I think they could do the most damage.
Yeah, and we're not talking about a league. We're talking about a cup that's very short. So the most talented team, if they catch fire and miracles happen, like you said, that have happened, Morocco, you gave them as an example, out of nowhere, it can just work. Because you just have to be good those 30 days. That's all you need.
Yeah.
You don't have to be consistent. Now, if it was a league, I would put the U.S. as the bottom of the three. I don't trust.
I would put Mexico as number one if it was a league.
Yeah, I don't think the U.S. is consistent enough to do well in the league. But it's also a very short cup, right? You play 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games and done. 8 in this World Cup specifically. But everyone, that's all for today. What's up?
Sorry, can I get one last thing in? I'm going to talk about like the mental aspect.
I was like, I know you have to go too, but go ahead.
I got you. 30 seconds here. I also, because I know a lot of Mexican national team fans will be mad at me that I didn't pick them. But I also think in football, we've seen the weight of curses like completely crush teams, right? Even Canada, we're seeing that right now because we're saying like, oh, you guys, you just keep choking every single time you're supposed to win. They're like, no, we don't. We're going to prove you wrong. And then they choke 2 tournaments in a row. So the weight of Mexico, despite being the best team right now and having the best form, and I would say closest to the finished product, the weight of the Quinto Partido cannot be understated. Like, dude, can you imagine?
But you guys will get that Quinto Partido. The round of 16 is the Quinto Partido.
Yeah, well, that's going to be some cheat. See, for me, I'm looking quarterfinal. But let's say even imagine it's round of 32. So the
sexto partido? Is that how it is? Sexto?
Sexto. Yeah, sexto. Sounds a little, got to be careful how you say that. But don't forget the T. But what was I even saying? Round of 32 or quarterfinals. If Mexico gets a team like Uzbekistan or gets a team like Cameroon, that'd be a miracle if Cameroon make it that far. What I'm getting at is a team in which Mexico is supposed to win. And everybody's, the media through the NA is going crazy. They're like Mexico has to make the semifinals now, right? We're like already looking past the game. We will get crushed. I think that is the most dangerous situation for Mexico to get in, is going to the Quinto Partido or the Sexto Partido, if that's where we're moving the goalpost, and we're the favorite. That's like what gives me nightmares at night, because I flash back to Sweden at the last World Cup, where it's like, 2 World Cups ago, where it's like, we beat Germany, like, all right, we're going to get an easy team in the round 16, then we get touched up by the Swedes, and then get touched up by Brazil. Like, I'm telling you, that's just the weight of playing for Mexico. I don't even think the Americans, the Canadians know what that's like.
I see Mexico like this in the World Cup. To me, they're a lock to get out of the group, unless they're handed an insanely tough group. But I don't see them getting grouped, especially the way they've been playing. And I think they're going to win the first round of the knockout round, just because I think it's still in Mexico, the first one. Then it goes all to the U.S. So they'll still play at home, and it should be a favorable matchup, and they'll win that one. The round of 16, it'll likely be either a title contender or a tier 2 South American European team, or like a Japan things like that. That's the end of the road, right? I don't think Mexico will pull a major upset. Now, like what you said about the US, I could see the US very much accidentally pull that upset. Very much accidentally. Not through merit, just something works out, or the team hits its potential. Like you said, if the US is operating at 100%, it's a team that can match up with the most tier 2 teams in the World Cup. They can match up with them. So I think Mexico's road will end in round 16. Canada, I think the furthest they'll make is round 32. I think they'll lose. They're not going to win a knockout round. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if Canada was grouped. Canadians will be pissed. They might disagree. I think there are strong odds they get grouped. And if they do advance, they'll lose in the first knockout round. The US, it's more of what you said. It's very hard to project right now. It's the worst team of the three, but it's also the most talented team of the three. So you don't want to count them out yet because they could figure it out in 10 months. But if they don't figure out, this is a team that could very well get grouped if they go the way they are right now. But that's a situation. I still think that that's the road for Mexico, round of 16. They're getting the quinto partido, but not the quarterfinals.
Not the one we wanted. If Canada go into the World Cup beat up, I think they're done. They're missing Jonathan David or Alphonso Davies. I think it's done.
Yeah, I just don't trust Canada. I don't trust Jesse Marsh. I know a lot of people were hyping him after the Copa America, and I think he did a good job on getting that team hyped and focused and ready for each game. They built an identity, right? It was quite clear how they wanted to play, but I just don't think he's a great coach. I think also he has his eyes and his mind in the wrong place right now. It seems like most of what he does is not for Canada, but he's always trying to take like a shot on the United States. Everything he does, it's almost like that guy that left his wife or girlfriend and he's with a new girl, but he's always like trying to just get back at the old girl that he was with, the ex-girlfriend.
Because he was dumped by the ex-girlfriend.
He was dumped.
That's the important clarification.
Exactly. He was dumped. He wanted that job for with US Soccer, and they didn't treat him nicely because the guy, I know he's American, so it makes sense for him to talk about the US. It's not like he's just talking out of nowhere. But you're the Canadian men's national team coach right now. And even before the Gold Cup, he had like comments about how all my players, they called me, they wanted to be here, almost like taking a jab on Pulisic, and the players didn't want to be there. He's right, but it's just like, dude, focus on your team. Focus on your team, right? And there were other comments that I just don't remember. I don't think his focus is on Canada. I still think Jesse's focused on the United States. And
if you're not focused at the World Cup, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Exactly. But we'll wrap things up here. Everyone, let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Which one's most likely to get grouped? Which one's most likely to go the furthest? And go check out Jack at Deadball TV. And one video I highly recommend is go watch our Agimon video there. It was great. People loved it.
It was a banger.
It was a banger. That was a great video right there. If a video that has Agimon in the thumbnail gets over 10,000 views, that's a banger right there.
Worth a watch.
Yeah. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Drop a like before you go. Have a great day. Bye-bye.